When your own child looks you in the eye and says, "Stop acting important," something inside you breaks, but something else wakes up too. My name is Margaret Lane, and at 67 years old, I never thought I would have to prove my worth to the very daughter I raised with every ounce of strength I had. I've lived in Charlotte, North Carolina for most of my life. A quiet street, a garden full of lavender, neighbors who wave from their porches. Nothing extraordinary, really. But I built this life with bruised hands and sleepless nights. I built it when no one believed I could. And I built it for my daughter, Emily Lane, who is now 33, married, and living just a few blocks away. You'd think staying close would bring us closer. It didn't. Emily grew up knowing I worked hard, but she never knew how much I sacrificed. I never wanted her to carry the weight of my struggles. I wanted her to feel free, supported, loved. Maybe that was my mistake, loving her too quietly, protecting her too thoroughly. The distance between us began in small ways. A forgotten call, a canceled lunch, a tone of annoyance when I asked if she needed help. But I always brushed it off. She was busy, young, building her own life. Then everything changed on a Tuesday morning. It was early fall, the kind where the leaves in Freedom Park turn gold and float like little pieces of sunlight. Emily had invited me over to help with something. She didn't say what, only that it was important and to come early. So I arrived at her modern townhome, a place she took great pride in, with its minimalist decor and glass staircase. I brought freshly baked banana bread, like I always do. It made her roll her eyes, but secretly I knew she loved it. When she opened the door, she didn't smile,
Didn't hug me, didn't even look directly at me.
Instead, she stepped aside and said, "Can you just follow instructions today, Mom? I don't have time for your habits." It stung, but I swallowed it. Inside the living room stood her husband, Ryan, a man who always seemed to talk to me as if he were interviewing a job candidate he wasn't planning to hire. His arms were crossed, and his expression already annoyed. On the dining table were stacks of documents, bills, planners, and a laptop displaying some color-coded spreadsheet. Emily's voice was sharp. "Sit down, Mom. We need to go over a few things." "Iset." My fingers trembled slightly. She launched into a long lecture about boundaries, about how often I inserted myself, about how she was an adult and I needed to stop acting like my input mattered in every decision. I blinked, confused. I never meant to interfere," I said softly. She sighed dramatically, exchanging a look with Ryan. Then she gave me a smile I had never seen from her before, cold, dismissive, like she was simplifying a problem on a calculator. "Mom, you need to stop acting like you're so important." The words hit me like a slap across my face. For a moment, the room blurred. I heard the refrigerator humming, the faint buzz of traffic outside, the soft clicking of Ryan's pen. But her words echoed louder than anything else. "Stop acting important." My throat tightened. "Emily, is that really how you feel?" She tossed back her hair. "It's how things are. I appreciate you, but you overestimate your role in my life now. You need to let go." Let go? Of what? The years I raised her alone. The nights I worked 2 jobs so she could go on her 8th grade trip to Washington, D.C.? The college tuition I paid by selling my wedding ring after her father left? But she didn't know any of that. I never told her. I thought protecting her from the ugliness of my past was a gift. Instead, it made me invisible. I slowly stood up from the chair. My palms were damp. My voice shook, but I forced the words out. "Emily, you have no idea who I am." She rolled her eyes. "Mom, please don't start with dramatics." But it wasn't dramatics. It was a warning. A quiet one. Because she didn't know my story, what I survived, what I built, what I became when life tried to bury me. She didn't know the truth about her own childhood, or the things I gave up, so she could stand where she stands today.
But she was about to.
I walked to the door, my body strangely calm. I turned back and said one thing. Only one. "Emily, you told me to stop acting important. So now I'll show you why I am." I left her standing there speechless. And that's where everything truly began. When I walked out of Emily's house that morning, the autumn air felt colder than usual. The sky was a dull silver, the kind that makes everything appear sharper, almost painful. I stood beside my old Honda CR-V, my breath shaking, her words replaying again and again. Stop acting important. A mother never forgets the moment her child stops seeing her as human. Driving back home through the winding streets of Charlotte, I felt years of memories pressing against my chest. Memories I never shared with her. Memories I thought didn't matter anymore. Perhaps that was the first lie I told myself. I reached my small lavender-colored house, my sanctuary of quiet evenings and soft classical music. I sat in my armchair, pulled the knitted blanket over my knees, and stared out the window at the trees swaying gently. For a long time, I didn't move. Then I whispered to myself, maybe it's time. Maybe it was time she learned who I really was. What I endured. What I carried. What I survived. I was 22 when I married Emily's father, James Lane, in Savannah, Georgia. The city was warm and blooming with magnolias back then, a perfect place for young love. James was charming in the way men are when they want something. They speak softly, smile easily, and promise you the world. But charm has a short shelf life. Reality doesn't. By the time Emily was born, James had changed. Late nights became disappearances. Soft words became sharp insults. Smiles became fists on walls. Never on me, but close enough to feel the wind of impact. I stayed for Emily. I stayed because I was afraid. I stayed because I thought leaving would make me a failure. One night, when Emily was 4, I found a crumpled receipt in James' jeans from a jewelry store in Atlanta, a necklace far too delicate and expensive to be meant for me. That was the night I learned he had another woman, possibly more than one. But when I confronted him, he laughed. "You're overreacting, Maggie," he said. "You always act like you're more important than you are." That sentence, how funny it feels now. How familiar. But unlike Emily's words, his didn't break me. They woke me. 2 weeks later, I filed for divorce. I packed a small suitcase, lifted Emily in my arms, and left Savannah behind. I didn't take the furniture, the jewelry, the house, nothing. All I took was my daughter and my dignity, though both felt painfully fragile. We moved to Charlotte with nothing but the savings I had tucked away after years of skipping my own needs. I worked 2 jobs, day shift at a small bakery on Providence Road, night shift at a cleaning service downtown. I can still remember those nights. Emily asleep in the back seat while I cleaned offices. My body aching, hands cracked from chemicals. Stopping at gas stations just to wash my face with cold water so I wouldn't fall asleep at the wheel. But I never complained. Never told her. Never asked for praise. I wanted her to grow up with confidence, not fear. So I hid every hardship and showed her only strength. When she wanted to go on her 8th grade school trip to Washington, D.C., I sold the only valuable thing I owned, my grandmother's gold bracelet. Emily had no idea. She simply believed I found the extra money. I told her it was a bonus from work. I lied because I wanted her to feel equal to the other kids. And college, oh college. When she was accepted into UNC Chapel Hill, the tuition felt like a mountain. I applied for loans, scholarships, grants, anything. I cleaned houses on weekends, I babysat, I even took up sewing old clothes for neighbors. I remember stitching hems until my fingers bled. But Emily never saw that. She saw me smiling, proud, waving goodbye as she walked into her dorm. I would sit in my car afterward and cry, not because of money, but because my baby was growing up and I had done it alone. Every accomplishment she had, I carried her to it. Somewhere along the way, Emily's gratitude turned into expectation. My presence became background noise. My sacrifices became invisible. Maybe it was my fault. Maybe by hiding everything, I made it look effortless. And now she believed I had lived an easy life, when in truth, I had lived 1,000 lives just to give her one. She didn't know, but now she would. I stood up from the armchair, determination hardening inside me. If Emily needed to see why I was important, she was about to learn, piece by piece, who her mother truly was. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. At 67, sleep rarely comes easily, but that day, I didn't even try. A strange clarity had settled in me, like a calm after a long storm. Emily needed to know the truth, not out of revenge, not to shame her, but because somewhere along the way, she lost sight of the woman who raised her. And I had allowed that to happen by staying silent. I brewed a cup of coffee, the kind with hazelnut creamer she used to steal sips of as a little girl. I looked around my quiet kitchen, the floral curtains, the wooden shelves James never once bothered to fix, the photographs on the wall, all pieces of a life she knew only from the outside. By the time the sun peeked through the blinds, I made a decision. I would show her my story, not just tell it. So I pulled out a dusty cardboard box from the top of the hallway closet. On the side, written in faded marker, were the words, "Keep for Emily." Inside were the things she had never seen. Old pay stubs from the bakery. Hospital bills from her asthma treatments. The letter approving my second night shift job. The deed to the house I bought without any help. And a small velvet pouch with my grandmother's gold bracelet receipt, the one I sold for her school trip. All reminders of the years I survived silently. I placed everything carefully into a folder, closed it, and sat for a long moment, staring at it. My chest tightened with a mix of fear and hope. I wasn't sure how she would react. But maybe this was the beginning of something healing. Around noon, my phone buzzed. Emily's name lit up the screen. For a second, I considered letting it ring. But I answered. "Mom," she said flatly, as if reading from a script. "Can you come over? Ryan, and I want to finish our conversation from yesterday." Finish? Conversation? It had felt more like sentencing. But I just said, "I'll be there." I grabbed the folder, slid it into my tote bag, and drove back to her place. The sky was clearer now, bright blue, almost mocking. When she opened the door, she looked irritated, as if my presence itself was an inconvenience. "Come in," she said curtly. "Let's be quick. We both have things to do." Both. Things? I almost laughed. The ease with which she dismissed me still amazed me. Ryan stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, expression stiff. I smiled politely. "Hello, Ryan." He nodded but didn't speak. I sat where I had sat the previous day. Same chair, same room, same tension swirling like a storm waiting to break. Emily jumped right in. "Mom, I know yesterday got emotional," she began, doing that thing where she softened her voice to sound reasonable. "But we weren't trying to be rude. We just need better boundaries. You involve yourself too much." I looked at her, calm. "Can you give me an example of when I did that?" She huffed. "Like when I told you I was stressed about money, and you immediately said you could help." That. I interrupted softly. "Emily, offering help isn't interference." She rolled her eyes. "See? This is what I mean. You always make yourself the hero." The hero. If only she knew how many battles I had fought quietly. I reached into my tote bag. "Emily," I said gently, "before you say anything else, I want to show you something." She looked annoyed. "Mom, I don't have time for..." I placed the folder on the table. Her voice stopped. "What is this?" she asked. "Your childhood," I said. "The parts you never saw." Slowly, she opened it. The first document she pulled out was an old pay slip from the bakery, $8.75 an hour, dated 1996. "Why do you have this?" she asked. "Because it was my day job," I said. "The one I worked while you were in kindergarten." She frowned. "But you had a night job too?" "Yes," I said softly. "That's how I paid for your school uniforms." The next item she pulled out was the hospital bill from her first asthma attack at age 6. I knew she remembered the night, but she didn't know the cost. Her eyes flickered. "You paid all this alone?" "Yes." Then came the loan paperwork from UNC Chapel Hill, the cleaning service contract, the grocery store receipts where I bought discounted food to save for her textbooks, the envelope with a picture of my grandmother's bracelet, and the pawn shop receipt. Emily froze when she read it. "You sold this," she whispered. "For your 8th grade trip," I said. "You wanted to see the White House." I couldn't afford it otherwise. Her lips parted, but no words came out. For the first time in years, I saw her as a child again. Lost, confused, unsure of the world. Emily, I said softly, you told me yesterday to stop acting important. But I never acted. Every part of your life. I built quietly. Maybe too quietly. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't speak.
Not yet.
Emily sat frozen, her fingers lightly trembling as she held the pawn shop receipt. The room felt strangely silent, as if even the air itself was listening. Ryan shifted uncomfortably, clearing his throat, but he didn't dare speak.
Not now.
I watched my daughter, the woman I raised, the girl whose hair I braided every morning, the child who once cried when I left her at school, now staring at the proof of the life I had lived behind closed doors. And yet, this wasn't even the hardest part. Not yet. Her voice was small when she finally spoke. Mom, why didn't you tell me? I exhaled slowly. Because you were a child. Because I wanted you to feel safe, not scared. I wanted you to enjoy your life, not worry about how hard I was working to provide it. And because I didn't want you to feel like you owed me anything. Her eyes reddened. But I didn't know. I never knew you went through all this. You weren't supposed to, I replied gently. That was the whole point. She looked down again, flipping through page after page, bills, pay stubs, loan applications, medical receipts. Each one was a small piece of the puzzle that made up not just her childhood, but my survival. But then she reached the envelope I feared most, the one I had never planned to show her. Slowly, she opened it. Inside was a police report from Savannah, filed when she was 4. A report about domestic threats.
About James.
About the night I grabbed her in my arms and ran from the house while he shouted behind us. Emily's lip quivered. Mom, I don't remember this night.
You were too young, I said.
But you remember being scared of storms, don't you? She nodded. That's because that night, lightning was hitting the street outside as we ran. You always associated storms with fear, but not because of the thunder, but because that was the night I promised myself I'd protect you, at any cost. She pressed a hand over her mouth, tears spilling silently. Ryan looked shocked, as if everything he thought about me had shifted. His voice, for once, was quiet. Emily,
I didn't know any of this.
Of course you didn't, I said. Emily didn't know. How could you? Those words didn't come from anger. Only truth. I gently lifted the final document, a folded deed. The deed to my house. The home she assumed was bought with easy retirement savings. I bought this house 25 years ago, I said softly. Paid every mortgage payment on my own. And every decision I made to work hard, to save, to sacrifice, was so that you would never feel the struggles I felt. Emily's breathing hitched. Mom, I thought you had it easy. I thought you were just comfortable. A sad smile touched my lips. Comfort is usually built on discomfort, sweetheart. You just never saw the early chapters. She cried harder. Not the loud, dramatic kind. The quiet kind. The kind a person cries when they realize they've misjudged the one person who loved them most. After a long moment, she whispered, Mom,
I'm so sorry.
I shook my head. Emily, I didn't show you these to make you feel guilty. I showed you because yesterday you made me realize that hiding my past didn't protect you. It separated us. She wiped her eyes with trembling hands. When I told you to stop acting important, I didn't know. I didn't know any of this. I just thought, she swallowed hard. I thought you were inserting yourself into my life. I thought you were trying to control things. I never imagined you gave everything. Her voice cracked, and she covered her face. I reached across the table and gently touched her hand. The same hand I held when she took her first steps. Emily, I said quietly, you don't have to worship me. You don't have to bow down to my sacrifices. Just don't erase them. Don't erase me. She let out a broken sob. I never meant to, but she had. Not intentionally, but slowly, thoughtlessly, as comfort replaced awareness. And then, a moment I did not expect happened. Emily stood up. She walked around the table, and she wrapped her arms around me, tight, desperate, almost childlike. Mom, she whispered into my shoulder, you are important, more than I ever understood. For the first time in years, I felt my daughter's heart against mine. But this moment, this healing, was only the beginning, because what neither of us knew yet was that there was something else she was about to discover. Something that would change the way she saw me forever. When Emily finally pulled away from the hug, her face was flushed and wet with tears, but her eyes were softer, clearer. For the first time in years, she was looking at me, not through resentment, not through assumption, but through recognition. Mom, she whispered. I didn't know. I really didn't. I know, I said gently. But now you do. She sat back down, holding the folder like it was a fragile piece of history. Ryan sat beside her, unusually quiet, maybe realizing how little he truly understood about the woman he had judged so easily. Emily took a deep breath. Mom, I want to know everything. Everything you hid. Everything you never told me. She wiped her cheeks again. Not because I feel guilty. Because I want to know you. The real you. A warmth spread through my chest. Painful, but beautiful. I'll tell you, I said. But there's something else I want you to see first. I reached into my bag again. This time, I pulled out a thin, brown envelope. Older than the others, the edges slightly curled. Emily looked at it curiously. What's that? My acceptance letter, I said softly. Acceptance to what? She asked. I handed it to her. To Duke University School of Nursing. Emily's eyes widened. She unfolded the letter, scanning the lines with confusion and disbelief. You got in? She whispered. You were accepted? Yes, I said, smiling faintly. 40 years ago. But you never went.
No, irraplia.
Because I found out I was pregnant with you 2 months later. I was working full-time and James didn't want a wife with a degree. He said it would make me too independent. And once he started down that path, nursing school became impossible. Emily covered her mouth. You gave up your dream because of me? No, I said firmly. I gave up my dream, so you could have won. I didn't lose anything. I chose something. Chose someone. I touched her cheek gently. And I would choose you again. Every single time. Her tears spilled over again, but now they were quiet, thoughtful tears, not just of sadness, but realization. Mom, all these years, I thought you were just living a small life, she said shakily. I thought you stayed home because you didn't want more. I smiled. I wanted everything. I just wanted you more. Ryan lowered his gaze, guilt flickering across his face. Mrs. Lane, I'm sorry, he said sincerely. I've said things. I raised a hand gently. You said them because you didn't know me. I don't hold it against you. He nodded, grateful for the forgiveness he didn't expect. Emily looked at me with a strange mixture of sorrow and admiration. Mom, I don't know how to fix this. You don't have to fix anything, I said. Just start seeing me. That's all. For the first time in months, maybe years, we talked. Really talked. Not as mother and daughter locked in old patterns, but as two women finally seeing each other clearly. She asked about my long shifts, my sleepless nights, my fears. She asked about Savannah, about James, about how I found the strength to leave. And I told her. Piece by piece, she learned the life behind the mother she thought she knew. At some point, Ryan quietly slipped out of the room to make tea for all of us. Even that small gesture showed a shift. Emily grew quiet for a long moment, then whispered something I never expected to hear. Mom, can you teach me how to be strong like you? I felt my heart tremble in my chest. All these years of sacrifice had led to this one sentence. You already are, I told her. You just forgot for a while. She leaned her head on my shoulder like she used to as a child. I won't forget again. I hope not, I murmured. Before I left that day, Emily walked me to the door. Her eyes were gentle, her voice soft. Mom, when I told you to stop acting important, she hesitated, swallowing hard. I was wrong. You are important. You always were. I just never saw it. I squeezed her hand. Being important isn't about titles or power, sweetheart. It's about the lives you build, the sacrifices you make, the love you give without expecting praise. She nodded slowly, her voice trembling. And yours made my entire life possible. I kissed her forehead gently, the same way I did the day she was born. That's a mother's job. As I walked to my car, I felt a peace I hadn't felt in years. Not because I proved anything, but because my daughter finally understood the weight of the life I carried, and the strength it took to carry hers along with it. She once told me to stop acting important. Now she knew the truth. I never acted. I simply was. Her mother. Her protector. Her foundation. Her quiet strength. And that is the most important thing I have ever been.